Yeah, guys, that's right. Jason Isbell is back. What's up, y'all? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Jason Isbell, or Isbell. You guys give some mixed messages on how to say it.
Americana folk music sensation Jason Isbell.
Saturday session, Jason Isbell and the 400 unit.
Pretty sure it's Isbell. Going to be talking about his new song and a bunch of other songs that I'm going to be calling top shelf country. Just things that you're not going to hear on country radio, things that aren't necessarily being put out by big labels, and artists that are maybe a little bit underground, maybe a little bit more highbrow, whatever it is. Don't overthink the title. I just needed some excuse to talk about a lot of this music in the video. And I've been talking about a lot of pop country lately. I've been talking about American Idol lately. And so just wanted to kind of go in a little bit more of an indie direction for this video. But everything's going to be time-stamped in the description and also in the pinned comment. So you can click around if you're not interested in hearing everything about all of these artists. But let's get into it. Jason Isbell and his band, the 400 Unit, kind of the current kings of indie country / Americana / whatever you want to call it. We're going to do a video on country subgenres soon. They are back with a new single, the launch of their next album, Reunions, and the song is called Be Afraid. Be afraid, be very afraid. In case you're unfamiliar, over the last decade, Jason has really established himself as one of the finest songwriters in all of music. I mean, starting really, I'd say the breakout moment for him was Southeastern, and I've talked about that on the channel here before. I think it's one of the most influential albums of the past decade, but with songs like Cover Me Up and Elephant, it just became this sort of iconic, stark songwriter album that was very inspired by him getting sober. And since then, his sound has kind of evolved on something more than free, and then he brought in his band, officially the 400 Unit, for a much more filled out rock sound on his last album, The Nashville Sound, and now on this upcoming album, that trend is definitely continuing. I would definitely say that Be Afraid is mostly what I'd just call an alternative rock song.
To see how long that you could sit was the truth, but you bailed.
It's about speaking out. It's about accepting that, yeah, you might be afraid, but you should say what you want to say anyway, because people need role models, people need someone to look up to. I'd say the easiest way to read this song is as a political statement about standing up to some sort of politics that you don't like. And given the line, don't shut up and sing, which is a clear reference to the Dixie Chicks saying they were told to shut up and sing after they spoke against President Bush, it would make sense to read this as a sort of protest against Trump, but I would say that the song can be interpreted from a pretty universal perspective, almost like a libertarian perspective, where just say what you believe regardless of what you believe. I think there's going to be a lot of people that have trouble accepting that as the takeaway message of this song, but that's definitely how I'm choosing to view it. The world is so politically divided right now that sometimes some listeners with more conservative or independent mindsets have trouble accepting that they might really relate to a message from a liberal artist just because it seems like we're supposed to be so politically divided. But A, all artists are liberal except for very few. And B, I just think it's a mark of intelligence to be able to take some truth away from an artist that you might not agree with on every single subject. I remember even when I interviewed Casey Musgraves way back in the day when her song Follow Your Arrow was coming out, which is often heralded as this super liberal song, I asked, what do you do with people that are kind of against that song? And she was like, honestly, as cheesy as it sounds, that's them following their arrow. And I think that's the right idea. And so yeah, think what you want about the politics of this song. I'm just saying, I think this idea of standing up, saying what you believe is really universal. I also think that when people become parents, it seems like they make a lot more sentimental music for a while. That's pretty observable. Even in a band like the Avett Brothers, who are my favorite, they all became dads and suddenly their music got very sort of virtuous, and who knows if it'll stay there, but they're not the Lost Boys that they were, and nor is Jason the kind of alcoholic, crazy dude that he was a decade ago. His life is really different. He is married, he is a father, and so it makes sense to me that he might be thinking of headier ideas about society and the world. I think that happens to a lot of musicians who are sort of removed from the day-to-day mundanity of community and local life. They tend to focus on broader subject matter because that's their way of connecting with the world if you live in a tour bus or something. And so I do think there's a little piece of me that wishes for that kind of personal feeling of an album like Southeastern, but look, that might just not be where Jason is right now. Now, with all that said, I think the sound of this song is actually super, super catchy. I've had Be Afraid stuck in my head, and that kind of, be afraid, be very afraid, like that kind of rock refrain, and I like how it's almost a gentler, quiet sort of undoing of that, but do it anyway, do it anyway. I think that makes for a very dynamic, good chorus. They worked with Dave Cobb again on this song. I think the drums are turned up way too loud. I don't get it. I'm like, it's kind of annoying almost to listen to because like just the drum sound is really loud, and I'm not sitting here whining that it's an electronic drum loop or anything like that. It's a real drum. It's just loud. Chill out. But on the whole, I'm totally excited to have Jason back. He's one of my very favorite artists. He is one of the country world's sort of most revered figures. He's an amazing songwriter. Can't wait to see what they did on this record. What do you think of the song? Let me know. So now that we've talked about Jason Isbell, I just want to mention a few other albums and songs and artists that I think are interesting, that I think are also on the top shelf. And these aren't going to be full reviews. There's just stuff I want to talk about. And I would just humbly ask for the comments. If you have thoughts on any of this music, I would so rather read those than just listen to this person, because that just stresses me out, you know? I do take recommendations, but I try to trust when there's a critical mass of recommendations rather than just responding to every single one, because there's literally like 100 a day. Next up, I want to talk about Tami Neilson and her new album, Chickaboom.
She touched your sleeve, you turn to leave. I wait while you depart.
Tami Neilson, who was born in Texas but raised in New Zealand, where she currently resides, has one of the best voices in music, full stop. If you haven't ever followed Tami Neilson before, she's a really fun character to follow. She's stylish. She wears these crazy, glittery outfits that are all custom made, and she has the big wigs. But a song is meant to be kind of the hook that gets you on board, because then she delivers these honest, thoughtful lyrics, this kind of natural sass, this soulful belting that is so compelling. Her style is very rockabilly with elements of country and soul. I've always said she reminds me of almost like a Quentin Tarantino Western, but there's moments on this latest album, Chickaboom, that remind me of like a James Bond movie, kind of vampy and soulful and sly.
Now it's bruised, broken down, and blind.
And then there's kind of like Elvis-y jailhouse rock moments on it as well. If you like some camp, you like some humor, you might really enjoy the song Queenie Queenie, where she's talking about all the hard ways that she is getting through her career as a working mom and doing it all. And with the wink, she throws some shade at country radio and says,
"'Cause they won't play a radio on country radio. Queenie, Queenie."
And that's something I like about her, is I feel like a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, and I feel like Tami Neilson will say some hard things, but in a cute way that I think people are more receptive to. And this record's really a family affair. You know, her brother Jay is on a bunch of these songs, and then her other brother Todd helped produce some of these music videos, and it's kind of cool to see. If there are two songs to check out from this record, I would say on the classic country side, Any Fool with a Heart, and then I would definitely say You Were Mine, which is a fiery powerhouse vocal that will remind you almost of like Shirley Bassey.
There's this before, and then there's after.
It is intoxicatingly good. Then let's talk about a country star currently making a sort of prestige comeback. That's John Anderson.
Look around, up and down, they're nowhere to be found.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I know a ton about John Anderson. I know John Anderson's big hits. I know Straight Tequila Night and Seminole Wind, and I know he sort of peaked in the early 90s. But currently, he is making a sort of comeback, and he is doing that with these beautiful photo shoots. It's kind of reminiscent of the sort of prestige vibe of Tanya Tucker's comeback last year. But John Anderson has put out two songs. One of them is called Years. It's very serious, very regretful, and has a very solemn tone to it. Then he's got another song called Tuesday I'll Be Gone, which is actually featuring Blake Shelton.
Tuesday I'll be gone.
This song is lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And maybe I'm partial to it because it is kind of about just getting in your car and driving. It even name drops the Blue Ridge Parkway, which I live like 15 minutes from. It's a pretty essential part of being a Central Virginian, is loving the Blue Ridge Parkway, because look, the Rockies, they're cool, you know? They make you feel majestic and adventurous. The Blue Ridge is different. It makes you feel like calm and existential or something. So if you were ever like, Grady, you overthink everything and you're so much of a head case, I'm like, just blame the mountains. They're right out there. To me, that song is pleasant and gorgeous, and it's certainly a better use of Blake Shelton than maybe this new Pitbull song. I don't know if you've heard that. But I'm convinced that Blake Shelton likes to be a little bit confounding, that he likes to go from God's country to hell right, and that he likes to release a pop song that he's collaborating with a rapper on and a John Anderson collaboration at the same time. That's just kind of how Blake is. So having talked about one John, let's talk about another John, this time John Moreland, who has a new album called LP5.
If you need me, you know where I'm stuck in times between.
Now, John Moreland is someone that's been on my radar for a while, but I have not covered because I felt like I was too far behind. Pretty much every music thinker that I respect loves John Moreland, praises his songwriting, and especially praises his voice. But sometimes you start to feel so far behind with an artist that you're like, oh, it's too intimidating to try to get on board now because I don't know where to start and there's too many albums. And so this time I just jumped in with his 5th release, LP5. And what did I learn about the Oklahoma songwriter? I learned that his songwriting style is really kind of bracingly, searingly honest. I kind of feel like he would be one of those friends that you're sort of scared to ask for advice because he's going to give it to you so straight. He's going to be so plain spoken and kind of point out all of the contradictions in you. It would be almost scary to get advice from him because he's going to keep it real. But that said, he's not my friend. He's an artist I'm listening to, and it is beautiful to hear in music. I mean, I'm talking about questions of anxiety and self-image and religion.
Was it Satan or the second coming?
That he is unflinchingly covering in his song. And his voice delivers those things so beautifully. The vibe of this fell somewhere for me between like Drew Holcomb and Ray LaMontagne, if that is helpful to you at all. His voice has a gorgeous tone and there's a real heft to it.
Well, damn it all to hell, don't it mean a thing?
And while I wasn't crazy about a few of the sonic choices on the album where they're kind of playing a little more with this indie drum sound that I don't tend to love, as you guys know, I don't find them very distracting at all. I know for a lot of his fans, it seems like this record going with drum loops was a big deal. As someone just starting, I didn't really notice. My favorite songs from this record were Harder Dreams, another song called In Times Between, which has one of the prettiest lyrics ever about tears falling and swimming in the tears that are streaming from your face. And I'm just imagining some like emo kid in high school painting teardrops and the lyrics say, I'm swimming in the tears that are streaming from your face. Someone should do that for an art project. And then the album closer, Let Me Be Understood, which is such a human and real thing that everyone wants to be understood. So I thought it was a really gorgeous, if maybe a little bit low-key, a little bit boring introduction to John Moreland, but the lyrics carry it for me. If you're in a serious mood, check this album out and maybe you will, have something stirred in yourself too. You'll want to be understood. And then I recently found this album called Calico by Brooke White.
Let's take it slow so we don't burn too fast.
Brooke White is someone that I knew from the American Idol days, and as I was doing my research for the American Idol video, I knew that Brooke White had kind of had this country duo called Jack and White that was doing a California country thing, and now she's doing the same thing solo, and at the end of last year she released this album called Calico, which is a pop country album that is meant to capture sort of the feeling and vibe of California with country music, and she did a great job. This is a really interesting album that I feel like a lot of the people in Nashville that are making boring pop don't necessarily feel the freedom to kind of bring in pop as aggressively and bring in country as aggressively as she did on this album. She's got a naturally sort of husky voice that kind of reminds me of Carole King, but in this case it's set against some really sunny, fun beats. Songs like Back Pocket, which to me is the standout here. It's so catchy.
Yeah, the back pocket of my jeans, it was made for your hand.
And that is John Heder or Heater from Napoleon Dynamite that's all through that video. All around, I just think it's interesting. I think kind of that California take on country music is something probably a lot of people want to do. Now, a different album that I'm getting to pretty late is Erin Enderlin's Faulkner County.
I can be your whiskey, I can be your cigarette.
This is not something that is kind of a cool pop country album on the indie scene. This is super, super classic in its sound. There's steel all over it. It feels super lonesome, super like there's a tear in my beer at the bar. A lot of these songs are about Erin Enderlin just sort of plainly stating that she's willing to be used. There's even a song called Use Me. There's a song called I Can Be Your Whiskey, essentially like let me kind of numb you. It's a little bit sad and low energy of an album, but it's also a really, really beautiful record that I know a ton of people were crazy about. So just saying, I finally got to that. If you're interested in checking it out, I would say Let Me Be Your Whiskey and Tonight I Don't Give a Damn are probably the standouts for me. Then let's talk about 3 songs that I just freaking love at the end of this video. Love, 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 love. The first one is Honky Tonk Hell by Gabe Lee.
Well, honky tonk hell is a hell of a place. They got a big old dance room.
Guys, you know I ride hard for Gabe Lee. You know I believe in his talent. I loved his album Farmland last year. I put Eveline, his song, as one of my best minor hits of the year in a video. His voice is interesting. Sometimes he kind of reminds me of Bob Dylan and how he delivers things. He grew up in Nashville. His parents immigrated here from Taiwan. I just think everything about him is interesting, and this song, Honky Tonk Hell, slaps.
I was a stuck up, no good son of a gun until the good Lord set me free.
And I'm sorry for saying slaps. I feel like a 14-year-old on TikTok, but this song does slap. It's co-written with Marcus King. It's got this real southern rock vibe to it, and it's about kind of looking around him and the honky tonks that are all on Lower Broadway in Nashville. And as someone that grew up there, he kind of rolls his eyes at it, but it's also kind of part of who he is. And this song is kind of poking fun at that with a real swagger. I love the part of this song where he says, Honky Tonk Hell is a hell of a place. They got a big old dance room hall. Seats reserved for all the folks down in Nashville writing phony-ass country songs. And if people ever get to asking, Mr. Gabe Lee, how'd you end up here? I look him dead in the eye, and my only reply is to hit him with a mile-long stare. That's badass to me, to be in Nashville and say that to all the people around you. Man, Gabe Lee is the freaking future. Get on board now, because I feel like everyone's going to be fighting over this guy's attention in like 2 years, and I'm just sitting here being like, we all see what I see, don't we? We all see that this guy's going to be a big old star, right? Then I want to talk about this guy, Nick Shoulders.
Well, my eyes adjust, my joints are rusty, sheets are awful cold and dusty.
Nick Shoulders is a new artist to me. I've only seen some of his videos, but he has such a unique style that he's undeniably fascinating. We're talking a beautifully hideous mullet and mustache combo that reveals a certain I don't give an F attitude. We're talking a yodeling vocal style, incredible whistling also throughout his music. And a certain vibe that feels classic and fresh at the same time, kind of gives me Jimmy Rogers vibes. He's just cool. My entry point was this song, Rather Low, that one of you guys sent me last week, and I've since watched a bunch of his videos. Like I said, not going to claim to know everything about Nick Shoulders, but he's on the radar. In a sea of sameness, I think he just stands out. When you see something that's super different, it's just interesting, especially when you sit here and listen to so much music that is so similar all the time. And then lastly, I want to finish off by talking about a song called Emotions by Boy Named Banjo.
Going through emotions, I'm going through emotions.
Boy Named Banjo has been on my radar for a little while now, and they have this kind of southern rock, country, alternative sound. I think it's really, really fresh. Their harmonies just feel so rich to me, and I find their sound really compelling, really listenable. It almost reminds me of like in high school when I loved, and this is not meant in any kind of rude way, like Dispatch or OAR, just because it was fun. They take that kind of feeling but kind of elevate it and make something that is lovely. Kind of like Whiskey Myers or Shovels and Rope. Anyway, this song Emotions is so catchy to me. The shoutiness of going through emotions. That's kind of dumb but fun. Then you've got the harmonica solo that brings in the kind of outdoor concert feels. I just love it. I wanted to give it some love. And with that said, that's going to be the end of this video. This was just a bunch of music. I didn't really know where to place it. Probably none of it deserves its own video except Mr. Jason, at least from a traffic standpoint. But that is all I'm going to talk about. So give this video a like. Let me know what you think of these songs. Check some of them out. Everything is linked in the description. I love you all, and we'll be back with more simpler videos soon.